Am I the idiot for threatening to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't get real jobs and become independent? I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have two adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy, and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, but she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable, and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this road. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, they had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, But I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, we remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She's started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, they're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, but there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, and I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care, Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers.